fucking veer off
Hey
topic.
guys, welcome to Reticulous Radio. That's your host, Conrad.
Oh shit, we're live. Okay. Sorry, I was sending Jeremy the link. All right, so yeah, we're live. I took notes for once, which is rare as fuck. But we're trying to stay on topic here. That's Josh.
That's George. That's Fred.
That's,
I'm Greg.
Yeah.
Ball guy with the slick back.
Up there. Yeah. So what's new in everyone's week?
Found out my king is a female.
Your what's a female?
My one king snake that I bought as a male. I was stupid and like never checked it when I got it. I just took the person's word for it. It's a female.
Not a bad thing.
No, I'm not complaining. I'm gonna start checking as soon as I buy them from that one, though. Yeah.
What about you, Josh?
Building new enclosures this weekend. I got to build 5 more 6-footers. It's gonna be rearranged all here.
Yeah,
so just adding more stuff.
Hey, Jeremy's here. We adding them?
Yeah. Hold on. Yeah, we can add. We'll talk about everything else later.
What's going on, man?
What's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Guys,
how about you guys?
Pretty good.
Can't complain.
Yeah. So, for those of you who don't know, this is Jeremy Turgeon from Man Reptiles. Jeremy, did you want to talk a little bit about your introduction into the hobby?
Sure, man. So I got started when I was like 7 years old or so. I threw a temper tantrum at a pet store. I was a little kid with my mom because I wanted to get a fire-belly toad, and I wouldn't take no for an answer. So that was my introduction to keeping. And then as I got older, we got computer in our house, and I was like in love with this fire-belly toad, and I started keeping green anoles and a few other things. And pretty much any time that I wasn't in school, I was online looking up reptiles. And it wasn't until I was maybe 10 or 11 that I got my first snake, which was a corn snake that I got from a local Petco that died because, Petco snakes. And but I was already keeping other reptiles, so I was like, I don't understand. So I was keeping things like bearded dragons and leopard geckos, stuff that already was a little bit, I guess you could say, more advanced husbandry-wise than a corn snake, Yeah. So I was like, I don't really understand why this thing died. So it was past their guarantee or whatever, so we went to a local chain pet store and got a ball python that I still have. He's right over there. And he's like 15-ish years old. And after that, dude, it was like my mom realized real quick she made a bad decision by saying yes. So yeah, that ball python happened.
Awesome.
And like I was already keeping leopard geckos. I was breeding leopard geckos too, and I was selling them to like local friends and stuff. And we didn't have anything crazy in the hobby all that long ago, 20 years ago. It wasn't anything like what we have now, so it was like a $20 high yellow leopard gecko. It wasn't anything super special, but I was like, I wonder if I could do that with snakes, and you could.
Yeah.
So I did. I bred ball pythons. I bred corn snakes and California king snakes. And then when I was a freshman in high school in 2007, I'd already been keeping and breeding various species of reptiles and was doing educational shows in the local area. So I started a business working with reptiles full time. It was called J&D Reptiles, and ran that all through high school. and through my first semester in college. And the only reason I closed it down was because I had a guy that was helping me out for a few years. And when I moved to Boston from Springfield, which is like an hour and a half away, so not super far, but I couldn't take all my snakes. I couldn't move my business. So this dude had been working with me for a few years, kind of knew the scheme of what I was doing. And I was like, hey man, like I'm going to put you in charge of this stuff. You know, I'll be down every other week to make sure everything's, you know, going the way it needs to go. And he and I have been talking about, he wanted to invest some money with me and get some new caging, get some new animals and whatever. And I was like, yeah, we can draft some stuff up, whatever. And ended up going behind my back to find a snake from some random breeder, brought it in as an adult, never quarantined it, started breeding it. And turns out it had some kind of sickness that at this point I could assume, knowing what we know now, I can assume was like a nidovirus. And it basically killed all my ball pythons.
Wow.
It was probably a good like 60 plus ball pythons. And basically took me out because I was breeding ball pythons more than anything back then, because that was like financial king, you know, of reptiles back then. So I mean, I had 150 snakes, but 60 of those were ball pythons, you know. And I mean, I had like pastel, triple het, ultramel axanthic pieds, you know, when those things were still like 12 grand a piece. You know what I mean? So like and they were babies. Like they were babies. These weren't big animals, you know. So a few other people that helped me out, and I went from getting texts of, hey, this snake might have an RI, to, hey, this snake is dead. And I had never had that happen with baby snakes in the 10 years that I was breeding reptiles at that time. Never had that happen to a baby snake. I was losing my shit.
Yeah.
So that was a whole big deal. And this dude was like trying to drag me through the mud because I told him, like, you show up at my house again to take care of my shit, and I'm going to get the cops called on you. Like, do not show up to my house, you know. And he thought that I was like stealing snakes and like all this other nonsense stuff. So started like contacting people that I had introduced him to. I'm getting blown up with phone calls. What the fuck's going on in your facility, man? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like,
Jesus.
what? So it was this big to do, man. So at the end of 2013, I shut everything down because I was in college. I'm like, I couldn't financially recoup that. I was spending, you know, 50 grand a year in college, you know, so I'm like, I can't try to rebuild a business while I'm doing that. So I shut down. I sold just about everything else that I had, you know, after pretty much all my ball pythons died, amazingly, except for my very first one.
Wow.
I basically sold off everything else, sold all my colubrids, all my like odds and ends things, and I was down from 150 snakes to like 12. And those 12 were just kind of like my pets for a little while. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I came back from college and got a teaching gig, so like the end of 2014, when I was like making decent money, you know, I couldn't afford to finish college because all my income was now gone. You know, so when I got my teaching gig, I had some good money coming in and decided to kind of invest back into keeping because I still loved it, you know. And at the Tinley Reptile Show in 2016 or 2017, I was bidding on a carpet python in the US ARC auction. And I won the snake, and Phil Goss, US ARC, is running it. And he says into the mic, "Sold, thank you, brass man," because he knew that I played trumpet. And that name just stuck ever since then. But yeah, man, so I've been keeping shit for just about 20 years now and breeding for about 15. All different stuff. Ball pythons, carpet pythons, boas, many different species of colubrids, leopard geckos, bearded dragons. I mean, a lot of shit.
Right.
Yeah, man.
Do you have a favorite to work with, or
Do I have a favorite what?
which one would be your favorite to work with? Would you say?
Oof.
That's always a hard question.
That's a hard question, man. I love carpets, man. My room. I mean, I'm in my reptile room right now. It's
Nice
full
setup.
from wall to wall. Yeah, thank you, man. It's mostly carpet pythons. It's about like 30 carpets. Yeah, I've got jungles and coastals and centralians. I'm trying to narrow it down. I'm trying to focus more on the jungles and the centralians because those two are probably my favorite. But yeah, it's a hard call, man. I love retics. I've got some retics here, blood and short tail pythons. I like too much. Too much.
Yeah.
I hear you there. There's too
So,
many from.
yeah, so just out of curiosity, do you have if someone ever comes to you, like, what would you recommend for beginners?
Ooh, I mean, I usually recommend if they want to go the traditional route, ball python, corn snake. If you're looking to get a snake, if you want something else, leopard geckos are really easy thing to do with crested geckos. Crested geckos probably I recommend those a little more now, especially with the pre-made diets, the Rapache diets and stuff like that. So you don't even need to worry about bugs or any of that shit.
Yeah.
It's like take this powder and some water, and that thing's going to be fine. Yeah, I think one of the other things that I recommend pretty consistently is stuff like cow kings. Even though they can be a little more feisty comparatively to a corn snake, they're generally like so ready and willing to eat. They get to be a decent size, and if you work with them, just like anything, they mellow out pretty easily.
Yeah.
But it's hard to make a solid recommendation outside of that, because you don't know how much somebody's researched something. But there's so many more options and so many more people interested in the hobby now than there was 15, 20 years ago.
Okay.
I now, like I've met some people along the way the last few years that are like 15, 16 years old now. And I'm like, like, we don't want to talk about my ball python that's as old as you.
Oh man.
Oh man.
It's definitely changed a lot.
Oh yeah. There's a lot.
It really has, man. Like it's
Oh.
I don't know how many years ago it was, but I remember when something happened. You lose me or something?
Oh, you're good. You're good now. Yeah,
Okay,
you froze
all right.
up for a second.
Oh man, okay. I remember when the banana coral glow ball pythons started to take their price nosedive, and everyone thought it was like the end of the industry, and it's like, no, man, it just means things are going to be more affordable for once,
Yeah.
but it is amazing to see that change, because when that drop happened, you started to see it happen everywhere. It wasn't just with ball pythons. Every other price point started to fluctuate, because that was like the top tier. It was $100,000 male banana ball python.
What was weird was some of those prices were dropping and other prices were starting to go up. Like I've said before, you can go and buy a Burmese python for $20 at a reptile show, and then it became 80, and then 100, and then 150, and it started going up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's crazy too. The colubrid market has like been skyrocketing. I was just talking with Rob about the Mexican black kings. There's a point in time you couldn't give those things away. Nobody wanted them.
Now everyone wants
and now everyone wants them, and they're selling for like $300, $400 for a hatchling. For a freaking hatchling, and you're like, wait, what? What? Shit, man, I shouldn't have sold all those.
For sure.
Another one that jumped up, that was the green annies. The green anacondas jumped up in price. Just in the past few years. Like
and
time.
I think you're going to start to see that happen a lot more with species that were once imported really, really frequently that are no longer going to be able to be imported as frequently, or at least not in the same numbers. So it's really going to become reliant on people who are captive breeding them. And that takes so much more effort than just finding it, putting it in a box and sending it on its way, you know? Right. So like we get people who people message Nerd because they'll want an anaconda or they'll want a dwarf caiman or something. And we tell them the price and they're like, what? I can get this from so-and-so for, for less than half that. And it's like, cool. Well, it just came out of a box and it's going to want to eat you. Yeah. you know what I mean? So it's like, cool, man, good luck. Good luck.
Yeah, you're definitely you're paying that extra for the temperament of captive bred.
You're not paying for that snake. You're paying for who bred it, basically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The time.
A lot of time all this, Yeah.
Say that again. I can't hear Keith. I just
lost
Keith's audio.
Oh, hold on. Can you hear me now?
Hold on. I can hear Keith.
You can hear me?
Uh-oh.
But
you can't hear me?
Can you hear us?
I can hear Conrad and Josh. I can't hear Keith. Keith, what's up, bro? What's going on?
I don't know.
Sign language. I want to see sign language in that box, man.
Getting signs. And I think he's fixing his audio. But
all right.
Yeah.
Now.
All right. Yeah, I got you back.
There we go.
Yeah.
I don't remember what I said. Oh. You're paying for the breeder's time and the time that went into the animal, not necessarily the animal itself. Just like any other skillful hobby, whether it's in the beauty industry or like tattoos or anything like that. You go to a tattoo shop, you pay $100 at a shop, and some dude down the street is like charging $20. Like you're not paying that dude for the tattoo, you're paying him for his 5, 10, 15 years of experience. You know what I mean? Right. So
yeah, no, it's very true, man. It is very, very true. And also that, like, you really are paying the labor cost.
Yeah.
Of like some employees not just cleaning that cage, but they're spending some time handling that animal, making sure they're the one taking the bite, so you don't have to later.
Right. Exactly.
You're paying for the blood loss, man.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
That's right.
For sure.
So I guess I had like a whole bunch of topics that I wanted to touch on, but like we touched on like a lot of them already unexpectedly. So
this is the first time Conrad took notes and we ruined it.
Yeah. So I didn't want to get too much on the nerd topic because we really wanted to focus on the Brass Man Reptiles, but I did want to bring up me and Josh were talking about quite a few months back, I don't know, he's quite a few years older than me, but I remember being back in junior high, being in computer class, and I came across the Nerd website for the first time. And I was trying to secretly print off all the morph pages and stuff.
The best is whenever I had come across I literally thought whenever I seen Nerd, it was just guys in lab suits, test tubes. Because I looked up, it was a purple retic created at Nerd or by nerds. And I'm I was like, they're nerds. They're just sticking needles and, making stuff there's all these crazy colors, and I was always the normal stuff, and then I finally found out, what Nerd actually was.
Yeah, there's some mad scientist lunatic running around with a ponytail flying in the wind. Yeah,
for sure. The evil morph god.
The evil morph god, dude. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Rob and I were just looking. There's a website called the Wayback Machine, and you can go back and pretty much type in any website from way back in the day, and there's like random screenshots of that website over the course of its history. And we found the old Nerd website, and we were looking at some of the old school price lists and shit when like spiders were still 25 grand, and you're like, oh, what a time to be alive.
Yeah. One of my favorite things on there was the "you might be a herper if" jokes.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Kevin wants to bring some of those back because we're working on a new website now. So he wants us to try to find a way to wedge some of that back in there. I don't know how we're going to do it, but because we found some old ones that were like, these are still pretty relevant.
Right, for sure. And then I think I was trying to look for them on other pages, and like I was trying to see if there's any remnants of them left on the internet a while back, and like I was coming across like Melissa Kaplan started like a whole thing where people were commenting on it, and like
yeah. Yep. Good times.
So, in terms of breeding projects, you got anything exciting going on that you want to talk about?
I have a lot of things that are supposed to be exciting. This year has been kind of a shitty year for me, which is certainly a bummer, but I mean, it happens. So I'll preface it with, I've been in New Hampshire now for just under a year. So when I moved up, it was the end of my breeding season, laying season, whatever. So I had clutches of eggs still back in Western Mass with my folks. I just moved all my animals up here. And the place I'm at now, I had originally moved everything into the basement because there were renovations still happening here, and this room wasn't available yet. So once this room was done, I moved everything back up, but they had already kind of gotten acclimated to downstairs. The temperatures were different. It was dialed in already. So moved them up here, and it's obviously not a big room. So it took me a little bit longer to kind of tweak stuff. The ambient temperature is much different than it was down in the basement. So my breeding season got all thrown off. In a perfect world, I would have expected like 10 or 15 clutches. But in the real world, I got like 4. So it's definitely a little bit of a kick in the nuts. But I did some carpet pairings, and some disappointment this year. I did zebra to ocelot jungle jag, and she gave me 2 good eggs and 8 slugs, which is really hard to swallow because last season she gave me 8 perfect eggs.
Right.
So, so I can't even say, oh, well, it was her first clutch. It's a carpet python. It happens. This was like, nope, it's just going to suck for you. But both of those guys hatched, and which is cool. I'm going to flip there we go. I'm going to flip my camera real quick because these guys have already hatched out. So,
hell yeah.
Oh, wow, man.
Yeah, so that's just a little low expression ocelot zebra. And then this little guy that wants to kill me right now is just a really cool low expression ocelot.
Dude, those are cool, really cool looking.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, he's got some crazy striping going on and stuff.
Because I love the zebras.
Say that again?
I said I love the zebra stuff. But that's
the zebra stuff is amazing.
Now the super zebra, that's what? That's a yellow?
Yeah, so depending on your lineage, it's either going to be smoking yellow or really unfortunate diarrhea brown. So
okay.
It could be anywhere in between, but those are your kind of like extremes. So, it's amazing because they're just as variable as normal jungles in that color variation, where you can get a smoking bright yellow and black animal, or you can get this like it's a jungle, but but yeah, so I got that, and then the biggest disappointment, or the 2 biggest disappointments, were my tiger jag female gave me 1 good egg and 25 slugs. That was a super hard pill to swallow.
first clutch though, right?
That was her first clutch, actually. Yes. So it still sucked, but yeah, that was her first clutch. And then my albino female that I was breeding to my axanthic decided to reabsorb. So she's out the door, unfortunately. So I'll try her again next year, but I was bummed about that for sure. And that's all I had going for carpets this season. So that was like, super frustrating. But for ball pythons, I've got a couple clutches that should be cool. I got waiting on a clutch to be laid now from a pastel GHI female that was bred to a coral glow leopard double het hypopide. And then a pastel hidden Woma granite fader that was bred to that same male. So we could see like some coral glow hidden Woma leopard fader stuff, which should be pretty cool. And that's it. None of my other girls went. So this year is going to be a super disappointing year. But on the plus side, I have a lot of other stuff that's going to be ready this coming fall for next season. I'll have some Borneo short tails, way more carpets that'll be ready to go, way more ball pythons, a couple more jungles, and a couple centralians too. So it should be, yeah, dude. I went a little Centralian nuts this year. Here, hang on. Let me flip this around again.
That, and I just learned about the moon boys not too long ago.
Oh, yeah.
They're sexy.
All right, so there's one right there. That's a hypo. Het genetic stripe.
Oh, damn.
She's pretty sweet.
Oh, yeah.
And then this boy, where is he at? He's hiding, of course. There he is. He's a genetic stripe hypo.
Oh, wow.
Let's see if I can get him to come out a little bit. Because his sides are silly.
Well, that's cool as hell.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, yeah, he's really wicked looking.
Yeah.
It's the pattern alone. That's
Really. Because without seeing the head, it would resemble, retic genetics.
Yeah.
Very similar. Yeah, exactly.
That's
kind of
awesome.
stripy look.
Oh, yeah. That's it.
Yeah, so
I
got a
really
couple
cool.
of those. I got a pair of het stonewashed that should breed next year. This big girl here, she's just a normal, but she's freaking smoking.
Oh, yeah.
Hell yeah.
Wow, man.
There's that tone of like reddish orange.
Yes. Absolutely.
I'm sure the camera doesn't
Like
know
real,
too.
yeah, like real rusty and
Yeah.
I love it.
She might try to grab my phone here. She's like, what the hell is that?
Let's
Get a little closer.
to be on camera.
Yeah. Nope. All right. I was like, this could be a pretty interesting freaking live stream, man. Oh man.
So
yeah.
Jason
So I've
wants
got
to know if you got the toilet in yet.
No. So here, I'll show you. So my place is still being renovated because we hit so many hiccups along the way. But no, I don't have anything. I have a pile of paint cans.
Sweet.
That's cool.
It's a start. It's a start.
Exactly. So yeah, so I actually live in another apartment temporarily that's like a half mile away. So it's not bad. So I'm here every day until probably like 1 or 2 in the morning, taking care of my stuff after work, and then just half mile up the road, sleep, and then go to NERD and do it again for another 16 to 18 hours.
Nice part about renovating, though, it turns out how you want it.
Yeah.
Speaking of Jamie, I think she was more excited. Like, she was super excited about this interview as well. She actually follows like all your guys' live streams over at NERD. RC Reptiles.
Yep. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, they were I know she was stoked about this one. So
For sure. That's funny.
Uh,
Yep. The toilet. So according to Kevin, the toilet has been purchased. So we're one step closer. One step closer to not shitting in buckets, guys.
Oh god.
Oh, man. just aim for the hole. You don't even need the bucket.
Exactly.
All you gotta do is aim for the hole.
The faster you make, the more buckets you'll have.
Yeah.
That guy.
Oh shit.
So like you've had some pretty cool like experiences in your past in the hobby. I guess we can touch on that a little bit. Like you've worked with Brian Barczyk, Kevin McCurley.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like when
So, well, I mean, if we focus on just those two guys, I mean, I've known Kev for 12 or 13 years, maybe a little bit more. I met him when I was in my early teens, and it was all because we had like a little local herp society in Western Mass, and every once in a while we get together, have a meeting or whatever. And my buddy Sean knew Kevin. He was much older than me, and he had known Kev for a super long time. And he was like, "You like ball pythons, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, ball pythons." So he was like, "You got to meet Kevin over at NERD." And I was like, "I don't know what that is, but okay." So
guy in a fucking science jacket.
Yeah, exactly.
Putting weird chemicals in snake water to change.
Yeah, exactly. So he was like, "I'm going to set up a private tour for you to go up to NERD and whatever." So he sets up this tour, and my mom and I drive up, and we met this guy who was working here at the time. His name was Jason, and he was like one of the higher ups, I guess, in the hierarchy of the business. And he and I hit it off like immediately, And my introduction to Kev was him walking through the hall, stopping in the room, saying hello, and leaving. And I was like, word. I didn't really know what to make of it, but all I knew was that this was the place of amazing ball pythons. I didn't really understand the gravity of it at that time. So as we were leaving, Jason was like, you got to come back in a couple months when it's hatchling season. That's when we're going to have the most crazy stuff. So we set up another time to come back, and that time I was actually able to talk to Kev and pick his brain a little bit, because after that experience, I'm seeing like infernos and all this other like crazy ball python stuff that like didn't exist anywhere else. We're talking about when like soul suckers were $17,000 and nobody knew what the hell they were. It was literally a totally different world, and I was like, a sensory overload. I mean, I got to see my first retics, my first cobras, my first rattlesnakes, like all on that first trip, and I mean, like, I'm like 3 feet away from a king cobra, so I'm like, like freaking out as a kid. My mom's like, don't touch it. Like, whatever you do, don't touch it. So it was just like absolutely amazing. So when I came up during the hatchling season and I'm seeing snakes that like, I can't even put it into words, because it was literally like, this shit shouldn't exist. How is that on a living animal? What did you put in the water? Like, what are you doing to this animal? And it blew my freaking mind. And I remember at that point, I had already like done a little bit more research into Kevin and like NERD and all this stuff. And I've loved the hidden gene Woma gene for a super long time with ball pythons. And everything that I was seeing from NERD was always hidden gene Woma granite. It was never just hidden gene Woma. And granite's like one of those forgotten genes. Nobody's really doing much of anything with it, but it is actually a key element to stuff like the Inferno and any of those combos, because what it does to the pattern is minor, but also significant at the same time. So I remember asking him, I was like, Kev, how do you know that snake has granite? Like, what are you seeing in that? And I think it was at that moment where for him, the switch went off, where he realized I wasn't just some annoying kid that was going to waste his time. Because I'm literally like, I want to see what you see. And I don't see it. So you have to show me. So he like pulls me into a room and he's like, okay, look at that dot. And I was like, okay. He's like, that's granite. And I'm like, you what? No, that's one dot. And he's like, yep, that's granite. And then he like pulls out 5 or 6 more examples of hidden geoma granite combos with that same kind of dot in the same general place. And there were also little things I learned along the way, like along that eye stripe, there's speckling in there. If there's granite, if there's no granite, that doesn't exist, and neither does that big dot. So like, because I was like, okay, I don't believe you. Like, what does it look like without granite? And then he shows me examples without granite, and the dot's not there, the speckling in the eye band's not there, and I was like, this mother. What? You know, and that had really like cinched it as far as my understanding of how Kevin perceived what he was working with, like his attention to detail on so many subtle things. Like, and I mean, we still see it now with like the fader gene, the odium gene, all this stuff where like people are literally like, that doesn't exist. Kevin's just making it up for money, you know, and then like, he's like, well, then explain this. You know, because this only has these genes, and the only other possibility is this new gene, you know, that I'm seeing. That's the only variable. So explain that, you know, and nobody can ever do it. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, I guess you're right, you know. And that seems to have been a consistent thing for him for a while. But yeah, so I've known Kev for a very long time. Brian, I met not very long after that. I think just a couple of years after that, at a White Plains reptile show back in 2009. It was like early summer 2009. I was already going to go to the show, and then I heard that Brian was going to be there, and I was like the kid that was like, oh my God, Brian, I like love Brian. You know, it's probably the only time I fanboyed about anybody in the hobby, you know, because I was doing, when I had J&D Reptiles, I was doing YouTube videos, you know, almost just as often as he was, you know, and that old channel I deleted in a very stupid fit of rage, you know, so it doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. But he and I were putting out videos almost at the same rate. And I mean, his collection was certainly far more superior than, you know, 14-year-old me, you know, living with my folks. But I got to meet him, and super nice guy, super genuine guy. And my favorite part about that expo wasn't just meeting him. It was also, I brought a big blood python to that show to put on a buddy's table. And my mom was sitting at the table, and I went to go walk around the show, and I get a phone call to go back to the table. And I'm like, hey, is everything cool? Yeah, just come back to the table. Okay, fine. So I go back. My mom's got this rag on her head because she took out that blood python, and it whacked her right in the face. So it's like a big 5-foot male blood python. Like not a nice bite. Not a nice bite. But I laughed my ass off because I told her not to pick it up, and she did it anyway. So, so the best part about that was I dragged her ass to Brian's table because Chewy was there, and that was when Chewy was getting bit by the stupidest shit he could possibly get bitten by. And I was like, blood to the face, bitch. Do that. So that was like my introduction to Brian, you know. And then a couple years after, it was like 2011, I was graduating high school, and my mom tells me, so I have a surprise for you. And I was like, okay, what are you possibly going to surprise me with? And she's like, we're going to Michigan for a week to go hang with Brian. And I was like, what? Like, huh? So she had like reached out to Brian and Lori and set it all up. So we went out 4th of July week, and we drove, which was like 13 hours in the car. Not enjoyable, but we did it. And we got there early evening, and we reached out to him. We were like, hey, so we made it to our hotel. If you're around, we can swing by, figure out what we're going to do for the week or whatever. And he's like, yeah, come by. So we go there, and he's like, I'll just show you guys around real fast, and then you guys go back and rest, and we'll get up tomorrow. This is when he still had his massive building, when he was still doing BHB 100% scale, like the 15,000 square foot building. Mm-hmm. And we're in the little foyer that's probably not much bigger than my room, right? And there's like the offices that jet off from it, but the foyer wasn't that large. And he opens the door into the Python room, and my jaw hit the floor because you see it in the YouTube video, but you don't get a solid perspective when it's just a screen on a phone. Yeah. Right. So all of a sudden I'm looking, and it's like 30 plus feet this way, and then like 15 foot this way, and then I don't know how many feet down of just racks and racks and racks of pythons, like mostly ball pythons, but there's some berms, there's some retics, there's carpet pythons, there's some boas, there's like all this, and I'm like, like freaking out. And we're like, he's like, yeah, look at whatever you want, whatever. So I'm like, sure, pulling open drawers, getting like things are like launching at my face. I'm like, this is cool, freaking out. And we go into the colubrid room, and it was the same thing, man, just like racks and snakes as far as the freaking eyes could see. And I was like, this is gonna be the greatest week of my life, up at that point. And it was 100% was, because it offered me two things. One, I seriously respect and still do seriously respected and still respect Brian for everything that he was doing. He's such a nice guy, and is so transparent about so much that he doesn't need to be. Even, with me in 2011, so what we're talking almost 10 years ago. So I'm 18 years old, and he's telling me, he's telling me like, oh yeah, we're having this problem with this staff member, we're trying to figure this out, and blah, 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 like just, whatever, and I wasn't expecting that, I was just like, we're going to talk snakes every day for a week. Woo! And it was, I seriously appreciated that, because I didn't want him to treat me any differently because I was a younger person or whatever, but I also didn't expect him to just be like, yeah, here you go. Like, you want to talk business? Like, here's business. So he shows us all this stuff. We go back the next day. He like picks me up and we go to BHB, and he's like, all right, we're pulling clutches today. And it ended up literally just like being a week of working, but in probably one of the coolest places at the time you could get any kind of experience, and I mean, like, again, I had already known Kevin for a few years at this point, but I was never able to be at NERD for a week. I would be at NERD for a few hours, so, and that at NERD, it still is now, is just enough time to go through a couple rooms and look at cool shit, and then think you saw it all until the next time you go up, and you're like, where was that? This was my first time to be day in, day out in this shit, and of course shenanigans along the way. We like blew up a quarter stick of dynamite at his father-in-law's house and like scared the shit out of the neighbors. Like, we had some fun times too while we were out there, but like the other purpose it served for me was it showed me that personally I did not want to have a collection that was anywhere near that big. Because up until that time, I was like, I want to be a full-time reptile breeder. Like, I want to have a huge building full of snakes and whatever. And I realized at that point in time, at the end of that week, as amazing as it was, I did not want that. I was like, if I can't maintain it myself, I don't want to deal with it. You know, I don't ever want to get to that point. I never want to be responsible for somebody's paycheck, you know, in an industry that is incredibly uncertain.
Right.
You know, I mean, like, I've got friends that'll come and be like, hey man, you need help, you know, cleaning your snakes, you know, and I'll hook them up with something, because most of the time those friends are also into snakes, you know. So if they want something from me later on, I'll be like, yeah, you know, I'll take like a couple $100 off that, you know, because you helped me out, whatever. That I'm fine with that. But to have like a full-time or part-time employee that I now have to like sign the paycheck for, nope. Pass.
You never know what'll happen. You could have a good year or a bad year. That's what's nice. Like me and Keith, it's me, Keith, and my brother Alex. We run Half Brother Herbs, and but it's exactly that. We all work together, and whatever we make, that's what we make. But I couldn't imagine paying someone else to work for us. So
it's a scary thought. And I imagine it's the same for anybody that's starting a business that starts to grow their business, and they're like, oh shit, I got to pay for an employee now, you know? But I think this industry is one of those that can be, you know, I mean, like I just said, I should have had 10 plus clutches this year, and I had, you know, I'll have maybe 4, you know, and 2 of those clutches totaled me 3 good eggs. So, you know, so I'm not even paying myself shit, you know. You know, so that was like, so I started getting back into some colubrid stuff recently, because when I was breeding full time with the small scale collection, breeding the colubrids, it's a low enough price point, but a desirable enough species or group of snakes where I was able to cover all my foundational costs, my feeder bill, the light bill, you know, whatever. So I could, whatever else I was making on top of that was just money I could put in the bank, you know. And I'm lucky in the fact that, you know, I now can get a staff discount if I need, you know, stuff. But I still want to be able to be at that point where any fundamental cost I have with what I have, I can cover, you know, off a project that I think is amazing. You know, colubrid species are awesome. So it's not just like, oh, he's just doing it to make, you know, $1,000, you know, like it's not that at all. I love them, but they do serve that purpose that as a business owner or as anybody who's trying to have a self-sustaining hobby, you need to be aware of, is that, you know, what is your bottom line, you know? So I think those are the things that are important. And that's why, like, a lot of guys that do breed larger scale, they breed colubrids to some extent because they're an easy animal that's a high production animal, that has a low enough cost, be it wholesale or retail, that you can sell to pretty much anybody. You know, so it's not like you got to fight for much. You know, the neighbor kid down the street that wants to get into snakes, you can sell him a $50 corn snake. You know what I mean? But yeah, so that week with Brian was like the eye-opening moment, you know, of my life and future career decisions with reptiles. You know, and managing NERD now has, I don't want to say totally solidified that thought process, but it certainly is a reminder of like, yep, I like snakes a lot more than people.
Yeah. Oh, that's for sure. So as you were saying, like, me and a buddy own a outdoor business. This is the first year that we've actually hired full-time employees, and we haven't been on any job site, due to this whole thing going on, because you know, we're also living staff at an adult foster care facility, and we shut our doors here. We're not allowing visitors. No one's coming in, so we've had to hire guys to take on, you know, our business, and it is really like, it's stressful because like you're not on the jobs, you're not making sure everything's done properly, and I mean, luckily we can trust the guys that we hired, but you know, it's still
it's a scary time, man, for sure.
The one thing we didn't really talk about though is Reptile Talk with you and Rob.
Yes. So the Reptile Talk podcast. So I started that podcast 6 or 7 years ago with Steve and Tillis down in Florida. He and I got to know each other via YouTube when we were younger. And he was starting to work at Eugene Bassett's place, Ophiological Services down in Florida. And I, again, knew Brian and Kevin. So we were like, yeah, we got a little street cred here. We should start a podcast, So we did it once a week with various guests. We had Kevin on, we had Eugene on, we had a bunch of people. And then I was going into college. Steve was getting ready to go to college, and we just had to stop it, and then trying to find the time to do that again was almost impossible. Damn, Steve is still in school getting his PhD right now, So he makes me feel insignificant, but So I've been wanting to start the podcast back up, and I have some semblance now of a more traditional schedule versus the last 5 or 6 years of my life when I was full-time working as a musician, where I'm teaching and touring and stuff. And I still do that, but a little less frequently. And right now I'm not doing it because of the world state right now. So I was like, man, I want to do this podcast again. I think it'd be really cool. I'm in a much different place in my career, and obviously being at NERD affords me a little bit more leverage to get certain people on to talk to, whatever. So they want to do this again. So I reached out to Steve, and Steve was like, I can't commit to doing it once a week. I can come on every couple of weeks, but I can't do it. So I was like, damn, who could I get to do it? And I was like, duh, I should get Rob to do it, because I've known Rob forever, easily over 10 years. So I was like, dude, I want to redo my podcast from back in the day with Steve. Do you want to do it? And he was like, hell yeah. So Rob's always down to do pretty much anything that's reptile related. So we were like, okay, cool. So we were thinking, okay, how can we get this going? Blah, blah, blah. So we started it now, 6-7 weeks ago. And it's been amazing. So basically we just wanted to put a podcast together that was a little bit different from all the other ones. Like a lot of the other ones are either like species specific, or it's just people talking about how to care for various reptiles, which is awesome, and it's a great way to learn from people you might not already know about or whatever. But we didn't want to go that route. We just wanted to shoot the shit about reptiles because that's what we like, And we both have had the ability to know not just like Kevin and Brian, but like Tom Crutchfield and like a bunch of other people for a decent amount of time. So we were like, man, I want to talk to these people and learn from them and from their experiences, not necessarily what's in their rack at their house, but what did they see when they were in Indonesia, catching wild retics? You know what I mean? Like, what was that like? Tell me that shit, And it has been amazing. And we've gotten so much amazing support, which we are truly, truly grateful for. Our newest episode just aired on Wednesday night with Savannah Bowen from Gatorland, which is amazing. Savannah's awesome. And we talked with Ryan Martinez from the Miami Zoo. We brought Steve on. We talked with Trace Harden, a bunch of people, and we've got some other cool episodes in queue right now. And we're working on getting Tom Crutchfield and a few other people on to just, again, we just want to talk about reptiles, talk about our experiences. And every 4th or 5th episode, it's just an episode with Rob and I talking about whatever. So the last one we did was we were talking about our experiences field herping, and just those random things. I'm talking about, being out in the field and my buddy gets mussed in the mouth by a black rat snake and I was laughing my ass off, like just the funny shit like that, because that's a whole other element of what we do, is just like, what happens in my snake room is not the same that happens in somebody else's snake room. And when you get the chance to talk to somebody who was like at the genesis of the industry, thinking about all those experiences, I mean, if anybody follows Tom Crutchfield, they see him periodically post photos from back in the day when he's holding like a massive retic or a big ass boa constrictor, and you're like, tell me about that, dude. Like, let's talk about that for a second, because to me, like, those are the things that as social media took over the industry, so to speak, that was the stuff that would make you go, whoa, so it's like, I want to know the story behind that. One of the last times we had, I think it was when we had Brian here, him and Kevin were talking about a book written by this guy, Bernd Bechtel. And this book was basically talking about some of the first genetic variations ever seen in reptiles. And the book was published back in like the mid 90s or whatever. And we were like, man, it'd be so cool to find that book. And then Kevin, we kind of forgot about it. And then Kevin brought it up in one of the Nerd live streams. And while we were on the live stream, I sent Rob $20 and I was like, go on Amazon. Here's my part of the money. Find that book. And that book just came in today and we were like staring at it. And I was like, man, there's some stuff in there that I didn't know existed back then. Like there was an albino scaleless Western Diamondback rattlesnake around in the 90s. There was scaleless water snakes in the 90s. Like shit that we're just looking at now and fighting about now, because that's all we ever seem to do in the world is fight about stupid shit. It's been around forever, for a very long time. And Bernd Bechtel was a dermatologist. So he's like breaking down skin composition and like how colors break through the skin. So he's approaching it from a very different way. But he's got all these pictures of these like badass reptiles and all these different color combos. And of course, it's not like what we have today, but to know in the mid 90s, there was some crazy shit happening.
The knowledge that they have is just unbelievable. Like we have a guy, Brad McCarthy. He's Worldwide Reptiles. He's been doing it since the 70s, early 80s. Mm-hmm. And we went out there. We were talking about Texas rat snakes, and he's telling us what streets. If it's found on this street, it's this locality, or and if it's found on this street, he can name the street name, everything about it. And I'll just go out there. We only need to go out for a half an hour. I'll be out there for 8-9 hours, just like
nuts.
Yeah, whatever just
let's talk about it. Yeah, man, because that's what it's really about, man. Like, and one of the last Nerd live streams, Rob and I kind of went on a little tangent talking about, it's okay to just be a keeper and not have to be a breeder with reptiles. And one of the biggest reasons for that is what's not often talked about is the business side of the industry, because nobody wants to think about putting a dollar sign on an animal, and nobody wants. I mean, now we talk a little bit about like, oh my God, I just spent $15,000 on this ball python, and you're like, cool, bro, I guess. So you spent a car on a snake. Okay, awesome, but whatever. But other than that, like, we don't talk about like, hey, think about your electric bill, think about the feeder bill, think about the gross stuff you have to do to get a snake to feed that doesn't want to feed, especially if you're working with like odd colubrids and stuff that only want to eat lizards. And then you've got to like brain pinkies and talk about scenting and like all this stuff that to those of us who have been in it for a little while or we're at least aware of it, we're like, it is what it is.
That's what it needs done.
Exactly. Most people don't think about that. And that's when you see people kind of get into it because they want to breed stuff and they get totally overwhelmed and they dump everything,
happens every day.
Exactly. I think we've all been around long enough to have known, probably a handful of people that got into it, dropped a shit ton of money into it. And then within a year or two, they're like, I'm not making any money. I'm out, And it's like,
it takes time, and like you said, people don't do that further research into it. You know, a lot of them don't even do the beginning research and just hope everybody's gonna, you know, tell them what to do.
Exactly.
It's hard. That's where I say, like, getting with the older people, you know, the older, you know, ones in the hobby, you pick up on a lot of stuff that it's not in books.
Right.
Books. If you're trying to write something out, you'll forget to say something. But if we're just sitting there bullshit, and I might, you know, spit something out, and you know, you wouldn't even remember to write that down. But and it's just it's so nice to learn from experience.
Yeah, for sure, man. And that's one of the things that actually irritates me about like the modern aged reptile keeper is like it is so easy to communicate now and do research now as opposed to 15, 20 years ago. Like you can go on Facebook and shoot Tom Crutchfield a Facebook message, you know, and we don't do that. You know, most of the newer keepers, they don't do that because they're just like, oh, I'm on this Facebook group. They're going to teach me everything because Facebook groups never lie. You know,
everybody already knows everything.
Yeah, you know, but I'm like, man, you know, I remember when I was like, I love rattlesnakes. And if I could own some, I 100% would. And I love the neotropical rattlesnakes. So Crotalus simus, and I'm forgetting one of the other ones. But I remember immediately I posted a picture of one on Facebook and tagged Tom Crutchfield. And I was like, Tom, tell me about these. And he responded right away. And he was like, oh, well, what species are you interested in? Blah, 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 blah. Posted pictures and everything. And I'm like, this guy's freaking worked with them all.
Yeah.
You know, why would I not try to reach out to him? You know, and if he didn't respond, okay, you know, but I made an effort that so very often we don't see, you know, and that blows my mind. You know, I think about like stuff like corn snakes. You know, one of the first names that comes to mind with corn snakes is Bill and Kathy Love. You know, Love Line Okeetees and stuff like that. If you follow corn snakes, they're super easy to get a hold. Well, Kathy's a little easier than Bill, but like they're easier to get a hold of. You know, Dan and Colette Sutherland at TSK, pretty easy to get a hold of. You know, everybody's on social media. You know, like do a little research and send a damn email, people. Like,
like I had picked up was it asphalt or possible yellow belly. So I had reached out to Balls to You, Gavin.
Yep.
And he was like, send a picture. I'm like, holy shit, you messaged like right back. Like, all right, send him a picture. And he's like, I can almost, 100% say, you got an asphalt. I'm like, and awesome. I'm like,
yeah.
There was nothing. If you look it up, there's no real way. There's nothing that really says that, any specifics on how to tell.
Yeah.
And then you find out there's like a little ring at the end of the tail where it's like almost like a question mark looking thing. And that's usually a sign for it. Like,
yeah.
Awesome.
And those are the things that like you have to talk to the people that are literally that either started the project or are so invested in that project themselves that they're seeing all these little things.
Right.
It's like I got a couple of buddies that are like really heavy into trying to do a bunch of Orange Dream stuff. And they're like, dude, so I'm looking for like Orange Dream markers and these combos and whatever. And I'm like, well, first of all, hit up Ozzy.
Yeah.
Ozzy's super easy to get a hold of, but also, I'm like, from just stuff I've seen with Orange Dream combos, I'm like, okay, you want to look for this, you want to look for that. And they're like, oh man, I never thought about looking at any of that, and I'm like, what? You got to find the people that are doing it, man, and utilize that resource, especially when it's not buried in a book on the 17th shelf of the 9th row in the back library restricted section behind like 6 fat ladies in the librarian shushing everybody. Like, what? No, just go on the computer.
It's amazing.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Man.
That totally got derailed from Reptile Talk, but that's literally like the whole premise is like
happens.
Yeah, no, but it's just like that's the whole premise, man. Like Rob and I have been super lucky to do what we've been doing for pretty much our entire lives, and now both being at at NERD has only helped that even more, you know, not just because we get to learn from Kevin all the time and work with all those amazing animals that he has, but it inadvertently opens an invisible door for us to communicate with certain people and get a little bit more immediate respect, or at least, you know, a little bit more willingness to want to engage. You know, because I mean, Rob and I aren't like, we're not here to be like, yeah, we work at NERD, give us all of your respect and all of your deals on all of your ball pythons. Like, that's not us at all, you know. But
give
like,
me 50% discount on all.
Yeah,
ball
exactly.
pythons.
only wholesale
You know
price
who I am,
lists,
right?
you know. Yeah, that's not.
That video.
Yeah, you know, because like that's not important, you know. But I mean, like, when we did the video down at Gatorland, right, for NERD, that was literally like Rob and I were planning to go down there for Southeast Carpet Fest. That was it, and we were like, you know, maybe we can stay for an extra day and do some field herping, and that was going to be like it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then it became, well, now Donnie wants to come with us and record some stuff. It's like, cool, that would be cool. Well, let's see if we can stay an extra day, and we'll contact a couple of people. And Rob was like, dude, it would be really dope to go to Gatorland. I haven't been to Gatorland in forever. And I was like, I'm cool. I was like, I can reach out to Brian, because Brian has a great relationship with Savannah down there. So I was like, I can see if we can, you know, meet with Savannah and do whatever. And he was like, okay, I'm just going to message her from the NERD Instagram and see if she responds. And if not, we'll talk to Brian. And she responded right away. And I was like, cool, that's helpful, you know. But she was like, oh, man, like, yeah, we'd love to have you guys come down, blah, blah, blah. So we get down there. Now, mind you, here's a little glimpse in that day. We got off the plane at like 3 a.m. We got the rental car. We slept in the car in a Walmart parking lot about a mile away from Gatorland for like 3 hours. And then we went right to Gatorland. Like, there is no time. We couldn't get into the hotel until later that afternoon. So there was like, you know, whatever.
Ouch.
But we did it, you know. But as soon as they met us at the door, it was like immediate hospitality, and we weren't expecting anything crazy. We figured, yeah, we'd go talk about, you know, gators and stuff, and they'd just give us a tour around the place, you know, for like an hour and a half, and then be done with it. And next thing I know, we're going in to Nile croc enclosures, and we're feeding saltwater crocodiles, and we're jumping in with, you know, baby Cuban crocs and stuff like this. And I'm like, what? You know, like, I wasn't expecting that at all, you know. But it was an amazing experience. And like, I guarantee you, if I didn't have the network that I have now, I don't think that would have been possible. But I am certainly grateful of it, because Savannah is super energetic and super amazing, but she's so dedicated to like crocodilian conservation and research and stuff. And she has all this knowledge from all the experiences she's had, you know, because there are a lot of people that are just like, oh, she's like the loud person from Gatorland that makes us all go to YouTube, you know. But like, in reality, she's like one of the most invested people I think I know in the industry, you know, when it comes to conservation efforts and crocodilian research. And that made it that much more awesome for me, because I'm like, I love your energy, but you're also not just a random face. That's, you know, like, that's amazing, you know. And that, to be able to do that, I'm now thinking about feeding that saltwater croc and almost getting pulled into that enclosure, because that was, I might have peed.
It's something you'll never forget.
Right. It's awesome.
No, it's something I'll never forget, and I'm pretty sure I lost a lot of manhood for a good 10 or 15 seconds when that thing was trying to pull me in. Oh, man.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Oh man. Well, yeah. Yeah, it's the connections you make when you actually like start reaching out to people and talking to people in the industry, like talking with people who you know are passionate about, you know, not only just the industry, but the animals themselves. It's honestly an overall amazing experience, and that's kind of why we started getting into it, because we love talking reptiles. I don't know. I mean, we'd just be playing video games, bullshitting about reptiles the whole fucking time. I'm like, why don't we just start like doing like streams? So we did, and like we couldn't get many people to like join us because system problems, or like people didn't play video games, and we're like, why don't we just start like doing video podcasts and interviewing people and stuff, and went from there. And we've been doing it for like 6 months now or something, and it's been fun.
That's awesome.
And even when that's awesome. The same questions that someone's already been asked, you'll always get a different answer. Where someone
for sure
went off about a story or whatever. Like even whenever you're talking about herping stories. Like I still wish my mom had. I wish phones had cameras back in the day. My mom didn't have.
Yes.
Whenever I was a kid,
yeah.
I still remember walking up and I had like 14 water snakes in my hand. Walking up, I'm like, oh look, like our record was 80 in one day, and the biggest one latched on my nose, and I'm walking around and taking off. I wish there was a camera phone back then.
Right?
Yeah, seriously. This generation is spoiled with that shit, man.
Yeah.
Of course, my son's 5 and walks around with an iPhone, talking to his grandparents. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, Steve asked me today. He was like, how much more stuff can you talk about? And I'm like, dude, new person every week, something new happens or comes up every single time.
It's very true.
Yeah.
It's very true.
Man.
It's awesome.
For sure. Well, man, we'd love to have you back on again. Maybe like, I don't know, maybe when you actually, yeah,
that would be that'd be a trip worth taking, because we're down in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
not too far away.
And I'm in Michigan, so like we've been talking. We're like, man, well, we've been like trying to figure out how to plan trips, and then this whole virus thing happened, and no one's going on trips right now.
Yeah.
And I think we're probably gonna come up to Nerd and visit y'all within the next year.
Hell yeah. Let's make it happen.
For sure.
Hell yeah, man. It'd be sweet. So
most definitely.
And if you want to talk to Rob, and maybe you and Rob want to come on and do like a collab with us one of these days, that would be awesome too, man.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Down for that.
Like I said, man, Rob is usually 99.9% of the time ready to do anything that is reptile related. So,
yeah, man, that would be awesome. Other than that, you got any like words of inspiration or something I'll leave the viewers with?
Do some fucking research.
Yes,
I like it.
Those are fucking perfect.
No.
Words of inspiration.
No, what I will say, 100% do some research. But like, if you're in this, man, like, be in it because you love it. And like, even if that love comes gradually, I mean, like I said, I've been in it since I was a little kid, but I've met people that are, in their 20s or whatever, that are like, I've always kind of thought they were cool, but like didn't know, there you go, man, and that's totally cool, man, because everybody has their own, I always say everybody's got their own journey and everybody has their own timeline. And we don't know when little blips are going to come up in that timeline that's going to, send us somewhere totally different. We just don't know.
Right.
So if you're in it because you're interested in it and you've got a passion for it, like, as soon as you lose that passion, then it's time to move on, But if you're going to be in this, be in it because you love it, man, because like, there's no other reason to do it. You're not getting rich.
No, definitely don't get into the industry if you want to make money. Don't do it. If that's the only reason, don't. Stay out of the industry.
People ask me, I was just talking to a couple friends back from high school the other day, and they're like, man, you're still doing this reptile stuff, man. And I'm like, yeah. I'm a glorified shit cleaner, and I'm okay with that. So if you're going to be in it because you love it. That's my biggest piece of inspiration or whatever to throw at anybody, and do some fucking research.
And it seems like the people who have always like loved reptiles since they were a kid still do now, and like are even more obsessed with it now.
So true,
like
man.
I know I am. Like it hasn't died down a bit for me. So
I still remember riding my little, what was it? I think it was smaller than a 16-inch bike. It was a little blue bike. We'd be riding with my buddy, and we just stop and just start flipping rocks, and it was just, that was the fun time, dude. Every show and tell was snake skin or something about
yes,
and
yep. Dude, one of my first show and tell things at school was like I had an Eastern spadefoot toad, and I was like, look at it, it's awesome. And people are like, that kid's fucking weird.
That was how I met one of my best friends, over the years. Was, dude, I was in, it was what, 3rd grade, and I took in my boa snake or skin, the shed.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, you have snakes?" I'm like, "Yeah." So, dude, one day my mom goes, "Hey, there's some kid at the front door, and he's holding a ball python." I'm like, "What?" So I walk down, and it's him, and he's like, "Dude, I brought my snake. Come look, Dude,
that's awesome.
It just went from there. Like,
that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think I still remember like in 1st grade we had to write our very first our very first nonfiction work, and like the teacher like published them into little like like the plastic like clips on the back and stuff.
Yeah.
And mine was about salamanders and where you find them. Like illustrations were by me, and I found it like 2 years ago. I'm like, wow.
Yes. Yes. Oh man, those are the memories, man.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, man. Well, man, I mean, I hate to hold you up any longer. I know, like, you have like a super busy schedule between, your projects, nerd.
I'm up for forever anyway, dude. I don't fucking sleep. You want to know what I was doing when you messaged me? I will show you exactly what I was doing. I'm cutting a roll of paper.
Oh yeah.
It's fucking. That's it. That's all I'm doing, man. I'm hacking away at some paper.
Oh, gotcha. Well, hell yeah, man. I mean, we definitely appreciate you coming on, though. Like, it was fun.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
it was super fun, and we'd love to do it again. I mean, most of our guests honestly make second appearances at some point. Like, I'm always like booking like a month to like 2 months out. It's
yeah, man. No, I'd be happy to come back.
Yeah, because there's always something changing in there. Whether like my room has changed, 4 or 5 times just within a few months, and it's just more things are added, or But,
I guarantee you, if you have me on again, I'll have another 10 or 15 snakes.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Maybe it'll be like right a few days before feeding day or something.
Yeah.
You can show some more stuff up. We always run into that problem. Everyone's like, I just fed though.
I just
like
fed.
a day or two ago.
I'm like, oh, I want to show you stuff, but everything's gonna hate me. Oh man.
Oh yeah.
Thanks again. It was nice meeting you.
Sure, guys.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you guys too.
Yeah.
For sure.
Hey, yeah. Hopefully we make it out there to visit you guys. That'd be awesome.
Yes,
So
100%.
Yeah.
Definitely set up a trip.
For sure.
Most definitely.
All right, man. Well, you have a good
Take care,
night.
guys.
Have fun with your paper cutting.
Thank you.
Hey,
All right.
All right,
See you guys.
See ya.
hell yeah.
All right. That was fun. I mean, definitely, like you said, you never know where life's gonna take you. So I mean, with this adventure, I know we're all kind of looking forward to the future. But next week we got Mike Clarkson. He's a wildlife photographer, works with reptiles. Actually, he's got like I don't have like his whole like job list experience, but it's insane. And we're actually gonna highlight some crazy shit he's ended up eating, and it's gonna be fun. I don't want to talk like a slew of like we'll leave it. But
you'll have to,
but
join in and watch to find out.
yeah. And then the other thing, you guys see this?
I would point the wrong way every time.
It's cool.
So
I was wondering why it wasn't going the way I wanted it to go.
Yeah. Is my hat straight? Do I look like T.I.?
Let us know in the comments below if we should do a live stream where I shave my head on stream.
Yeah.
Let me know.
We should totally do that.
You get a straight razor.
Fuck you. Fuck. Motherfuckers. I didn't think you guys would be down for the idea. God damn it. All right. We might make that a thing because at this rate, if I let this go another month, it's going to be really bad. So, straight razor. Yeah. No, thank you.
Come on.
All right.
We'll be the shiny head crew.
Hell yeah. Yeah. One love, y'all.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys. Thank you for tuning in. It's always fun. And thank you, guys. Seriously, though.
Yeah.
Our viewers and everyone. All right. We're out. That's it. Cut the tape.